what he has said earlier, okay? The soul, so what he has told you earlier in the small para, the soul becomes master by becoming first the knower, jnata. But he must also be the enjoyer, bhokta. Without enjoyment, mastery is not possible. That's what he is saying. So interesting. You would have thought that you can be master without enjoyment, but Sridhar is saying no. You have to have enjoyment also, then only you are master. Then he says, enjoyment in the lower hemisphere is negative. That is to say, where there is pleasure, there is bound also to be pain and suffering. In the higher hemisphere, the enjoyment is pure, without its contrary element of pain and suffering. In the higher hemisphere, there is a negative and a positive aspect to enjoyment. Negative when it is passive, spiritual enjoyment. But when the positive enjoyment is active, it's an enjoyment that possesses everything and takes ananda in everything, all things, all activities, all events. Okay, that's what he said. So now, when you are master, what happens? Just 1 second. Yeah, when you are master, what happens? There is no loss of freedom. In the physical world, there is no freedom at all because you are part of, you are identified with the body-mind life, and the body-mind life is being moved about like a pawn on the chessboard by the nature. Universal nature is making you move. So, but when you are in the higher level of consciousness, there is no loss of freedom. So we read the whole para and then we'll come back to it. Have you read it? No, we have not. So if you have not read it, one of you has to read.
Yes, I will read.
Okay, go ahead.
There is no loss of freedom, no descent into an ignorant attachment. The man free in his soul is aware that the divine is the lord of the action of nature, that Maya is his knowledge will, determining and effecting all, that force is the will side of this double divine power, in which knowledge is always present and effectual. He is aware of himself also, even individually, as a center of the divine existence. A portion of the Lord, the Gita expresses it, controlling so far the action of nature, which he views, upholds, sanctions, enjoys, knows, and by the determinative power of knowledge, controls. And when he universalizes himself, his knowledge still reflects only the divine knowledge. His will effectuates only the divine will. He enjoys only the divine delight and not an ignorant personal satisfaction. Thus, the Purusha preserves his freedom in its possession, renunciation of limited personality, even in its representative enjoyment and delight of cosmic being. It has taken up fully in the higher poise the true relations of the soul and nature.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start reading. So there is no loss of freedom when you are in the, when you are a master of your body mind life, and there is total enjoyment. He told you earlier that you have to go step by step. The first step is sakshi. You are only the witness of your own body mind life. You are not interested in controlling it, nor do you have the power to control it. You are just watching, and the movement is going on like a car or a scooter which has been switched off and it is going on its own. You are sitting on it, but it's going on its own. So there's no, but when you are in the higher level of consciousness, you have full power over your body, mind, life. Okay, so there is no loss of freedom, no descent into an ignorant attachment. Note the word descent. Your consciousness is not in the body, mind, life. It is up there, but it is controlling it. It is seated high above on the mountain top, but it has got a power in the valley. Okay, the valley is not something independent of the mountain top. The mountain top, when you are sitting on it, you have the power also to determine events in the valley. That's what he's saying. Okay, no descent into ignorant attachment. But can you descend? You can descend without ignorance. You can descend. In fact, you can't sit on top and control. You have to come down also to control. But when you come down into your body mind life, you are not in ignorance and you are in knowledge only. You are not subject to your body mind life. You are using body mind life. You are using the body mind life as an instrument, but you are not subject to them. Like we are. We are subject to our body mind life. The man, free in his soul, is aware that the divine is the Lord of the action of nature. So, first of all, you have to realize when we are the Sakshi that nature is acting on our body mind life. But when you are free in the soul and you are aware that the divine is the Lord, and even not only is nature controlling you, but the divine is controlling nature also. Okay? So that Maya that Maya M cap. Okay, that Maya is the highest, the power of the divine to create forms and the universe, and not unreal universe, real universe. That's the power. When you are a master, Maya is a real power of making worlds. But what is interesting is, just think about it. It's very interesting. Maya is the power to create, but create something which doesn't, whatever you want to create, you can create. Okay. I like to put it in a very dramatic manner, and that dramatic manner is this, that the divine has the power to even take mud and make a lotus out of it. It has got the power to take sand and make a coconut out of it, a sweet coconut. Okay, so this is the power of Maya. Okay, it's unbelievable. The Maya is there. Okay, that Maya is his knowledge will. It is Chit Shakti. It is not only knowledge or it's not only force. It is both together. You have to use your force, but you must know how to do it properly. So that's why knowledge will. Knowledge will, you can say Chit Shakti. Okay. Determining and affecting all. First of all, it determines what do I want to create, and then it creates it. So there is the determining aspect is of the knowledge, and the affecting aspect is the will, the force. Very clearly you can see the difference in the words also. You go on attributing the right value to the words, you are determining something. I want to do this. Which part of you is doing this? Your mind, okay, or the knowledge aspect. And you are affecting it. You are doing it through your power. That force is the will side of this double divine power. The double divine power, knowledge and force. Okay? That force is the will side of this double divine power. The will is very interesting again, because in the West they talk of will, okay, but in India we talk of Shakti. It's the same thing, but will is Shakti directed to a particular work. You want to do something and you have the power to do it. The will side of this double divine power. Double divine power, consciousness and force, Chit Shakti, in which knowledge is always present and effectual. The force is absolutely full of knowledge, and the knowledge is also full of power. That's it, at the highest level. But when it comes down, they start separating, and they separate even at the higher overmind level. And they come down to the physical world, the two seem to be absolutely two different things. Knowledge need not necessarily have the force to do what it wants to do. And force also need not be able to do what it wants to do unless it has knowledge. So the two have to be combined. Okay. So in fact, it's very, very clear now in science, when you discover a thing, you discover that matter is energy, you discover that sunlight is energy, this is knowledge. But now you must have the force, you must know how to convert it. So the knowledge comes in and tells you, okay, to tap the wind power, use, what is it called, the windmill, and to tap the sunlight, use the photovoltaic cells. Okay? So this is how you have to. This is the will and knowledge. Both will and knowledge both have to be used. Affecting the force is the will side, and the double divine power, in which knowledge is always present and effective. He is aware of himself. Who is the he? the man free in his soul. Okay? He is aware of himself also, even individually, as a center of the divine existence. Now that's interesting. So when we're saying even individually, because you can be aware at a cosmic level, but you can also be aware of yourself as a small individual, limited individual. Even the soul, even when it is divine, it can be individual as well as cosmic. Okay? Even individually as a center of the divine existence, a portion of the Lord. Portion of the Lord is called, the Gita expresses it, Amsha Sanatana. Okay? That's what is usually a portion of the Lord. I'll open comment. Gita, Amsha Sanatana. I have not given the reference, but I'll put it later on. Okay? The Gita expresses, controlling so far the action of nature which he views. Now note the word views. Views, what does it correspond to? Sakshi, witness. Upholds, what does it correspond to? Bharta. Okay, he is upholding, he is bearing. Sanctions, Anumanta. Okay, enjoys, Bhokta. Knows, Jnata. Okay, by the determinative power of knowledge, controls. So with all these things, he controls everything. And when he universalizes himself, the individual becomes universal. Okay? The grain of salt becomes the salt in the sea, or the grain of sugar becomes the sweetness of the whole. Okay? When he universalizes himself, his knowledge still reflects only the divine knowledge. What is individual knowledge becomes one with the divine knowledge. His will effectuates only the divine will. He enjoys only the divine delight and not an ignorant personal satisfaction. Now this is interesting because when we come to the physical world, okay, I told you, when you ask mother for something, she may grant it to you. But she will grant it to you and you feel that mother has done it. But she will do it only when it is in consonance, only when it is in harmony with the divine will. If the divine will agrees that yes, you can do it, she will do it. Okay. This is exactly also, I think I gave you one example of Raman Maharshi also. There is a couple who had not had children for 30, 40 years of their marriage. And they came to him and said, Bhagavan, they used to call him Bhagavan. Everybody used to call him Bhagavan. Even now he is known as Bhagavan. That was the address, just as Sri used to be called Lord. Okay, so they asked him that they want to be blessed to have a child. And Raman Maharshi, he kept quiet. But within a year, they got a child. Okay? So is it Raman Maharshi who is giving them, or is it the divine will? It's the divine will through Raman. But if he felt that the divine, for some reason or other, does not want them to have a child, they wouldn't have it. Okay? So that you must keep in mind. That is the granting of the boon is in consonance with the divine command. That's what we say. So, knowledge, and when he universalizes himself, his knowledge still reflects only the divine knowledge. His will effectuates only the divine will. He enjoys only the divine delight and not an ignorant personal satisfaction. All of us are, when we enjoy, we are enjoying an ignorant personal satisfaction. We are attached to the enjoyment, and we are also not thinking of a vast enjoyment. We are enjoying only that particular thing which we have got. Actually, we should be capable of enjoying everything, but we don't have that capacity. Thus, the Purusha preserves his freedom, its freedom, in its possession, renunciation of limited personality, even in its representative enjoyment, and delight of cosmic being. It. So what is the it? The Purusha. It has taken up fully in the higher poise the true relations of the soul and nature. Soul and nature become In the higher poises, the spiritual planes of consciousness and soul and nature are different, but they are not completely separated as in the physical world. The soul has no power over nature. But in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you see the difference, and as you keep mounting higher and higher, you have power over the nature. That's what he has given you, all those gradations. Huh? The gradations, I repeat. First of all, viewing. That is Sakshi, witness, upholds, Bharta, sanctions, Anumanta, enjoys, Bhokta, knows, Jnata. Okay, so this is the gradation. So when you enjoy, you become the master of your own nature. So that's what he's saying. Okay, we go to the next para. So Purusha and Prakriti. Okay, just to summarize, Purusha and Prakriti at a lower level. Usually, the Purusha is not even aware of itself, its own existence. The Purusha, the consciousness in you, thinks that it's the body-mind life. It is identified with nature and thinks it is body-mind life. When you go to this, and there's no power over you are completely under the law of karma, the law of causality. Okay, fate is absolutely a fact. Then, when you separate yourself from body, mind, life and go to the spiritual levels of consciousness, you see the difference between the two. And that difference is still exists even at the overmind level, but you have power over it. Two things exist. But when you go to the third level, the spiritual level, the supramental level, then soul and nature are seen to be one. The force has got knowledge in it, and the knowledge has got force in it. They are not separate, they are one. So now we can go to the next para. Purusha and Prakriti in their union. Who will read? Gitanjali?
Shall I?
Yes, Yasmin, please do. Purusha and Prakriti.
Purusha and Prakriti, in their union with duality, arise from the being of Sachidananda. Self-conscious existence is the essential nature of the being, that is Sat or Purusha. The power of self-aware existence, whether drawn into itself or acting in the works of its consciousness and force, its knowledge and its will, Chit and tapas, chit and its shakti, that is prakriti, the light of being, ananda, is the eternal truth of the union of this conscious being and its conscious force, whether absorbed in itself or else deployed in the inseparable duality of its two aspects. It unrolls the worlds as prakriti and views them as purusha, acts in them and upholds the action, executes works, and gives the sanction which the force of nature cannot act, executes and controls the knowledge and the will, and knows and controls the determinations of the knowledge force and will force, ministers to the enjoyment and enjoys. All is the sole possessor, observer, knower, lord of nature, and nature expressing the being, executing the will, satisfying the self knowledge, ministering to the delight of being of the soul. There we have, founded on the very nature of being, the supreme and universal nature of Prakriti and Purusha. The relation in its imperfect, perverted, or reversed terms in the world as we see it, but the perfect relation brings the absolute joy of the soul in itself, and based upon that, the absolute joy of the soul in nature, which is the divine fulfillment of the world existence.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the chapter. So I'll do one thing. We'll go into details, but before we go into details, I'll just read out to you the summary of what he's saying. Then we will, just one second. totally gone. So what he's saying here in this paragraph, Purusha and Prakriti have their home and origin in Satchidananda at the highest level. They are united. They are united at the summit. 1 second. Yeah. Oh, it's not working. Why is it not working? Okay. So they are united at the summit in spirit, and they are dual and separate in the lowest level of manifestation. Very clear. Because we are not aware of our soul and our body mind life, we think we are. So it is separate. But at the highest level, they are one. Purusha is self-conscious existence. Purusha is self-conscious existence, which is Sat. Sat is the substance, a substance which is conscious of itself. Okay? And Prakriti is the power of self-aware existence. Okay? To understand these two statements, you can think of the sun. The sun is the Purusha, and its power of light and heat is Prakriti. So this is what you can understand. Srimati is saying Purusha is self-conscious existence. It is a Sat. Sat is a substance. The sun also is substance. Okay, that is the Purusha. But the power to give light and heat is the Prakriti. Prakriti is power of self-aware existence, whether indrawn to a static, self-concentrated oneness or self-extended in a vast cosmic activity. So when it is indrawn, it's the transcendent. It is looking only into itself and withdrawn, like a tortoise withdraws its limbs into itself. It's not aware, it wants to separate itself from the physical world. Okay? That's the Purusha. It can do that. It can concentrate only in itself. That is usually described as Chit Ghana, the concentrated consciousness. And that's the inward looking. So they say static, self-concentrated oneness. Only oneness. But when it is extended, it becomes a many. It becomes a cosmos. Okay? So Prakriti is conscious force at the highest level. Delight is the eternal truth of the union of Purusha and Prakriti. Okay? Whether absorbed into immutability or deployed for action when they are inseparable, but dual and seem to be separated. So, enjoyment can be there in both the cases. When Purusha and Prakriti are also absorbed into each other, immutable or deployed for action in the physical world also. A yogi may experience the ananda of Purusha and Prakriti as one at the highest level, but a yogi may also enjoy everything in the physical world, okay? Even when he is not identified with body mind life, but living in the physical world. This delight opens itself into the manifested world as Prakriti, but regards its own creation as Purusha. Okay? Prakriti, when it is there, it regards its own creation as Purusha. Purusha sanctions all Prakriti's movements and upholds the eternal activity. The activity cannot exist without the static condition. Again, to understand that also, we can think of the glacier and the rivers that come from it. The glacier is non-moving. Actually, it moves at a very slow pace, but if you think of it as non-moving, that's a static condition. And if the glacier doesn't exist, there can be no river, and the river is flowing and in movement. The river is the universe, and the glacier is the spirit. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Purusha sanctions all Prakriti's movements and upholds the eternal activity. Prakriti executes and controls the knowledge force and will force. It ensures enjoyment of the soul. The relation of Purusha and Prakriti, when imperfect and perverted, is a manifested physical world as you see it in ignorance. Okay? When they are imperfect, the relation is imperfect, we see a dichotomy between the two. When their relation is perfect, at the summit, there is absolute joy of the soul in itself, but also in the external world. You have to say something very interesting in the delight of existence in the life divine. He says that when you enjoy, enjoyment can be of three different types. One, you enjoy your own condition inside. Okay, that is one. Then the second one, you enjoy your relation with the world. Okay, and the third is you enjoy the enjoyment of others. It's not your enjoyment, but you are enjoying the enjoyment of others. So three types of enjoyments. Interesting, isn't it? One doesn't think of that. Enjoying only my own condition. Okay. Oh, beautiful. Purity is there. Enjoyment is there. I'm not interested in the physical world. There can be deep ananda in the transcendent consciousness. Okay. And then the second, the world is there and I'm enjoying the world. I've created the world and I'm enjoying the world. The third one, whatever enjoyment is there in the world, other human beings or other animals or whatever you want, other people, their enjoyment also you are enjoying. It's a perfection. There is three types of enjoyments. This is the aim of the integral yoga and the fulfillment of the world existence. So, when you become master of your soul at the highest level, you need not disappear into the infinite. You can come down into the physical world and not be subject to ignorance and attachment to body, mind, life, but you can be free and you will enjoy the world at that time. In fact, there can be no unpleasant experience at that time for you. Okay? So that's what he's saying, and that's the end of the chapter. Clear? So, to summarize, again we can say the normal human being is seeing the many, he is in ignorance, he sees the many to be the truth, okay, and he feels that there is a division. You see infinite division. Each human being you see as something different from himself. Second level, you go to the spiritual level of consciousness, you start seeing the oneness. Okay, you start seeing the oneness. But there is a difference between spirit and matter. You start seeing the oneness, it is there, but there is a division between spirit and matter. Then you go to the third level, the supramental level, that's the aim of the integral yoga. And there you see that there is a basic oneness which expresses itself in multiplicity. And you enjoy everything. Those things which you thought were dualities, truth and falsehood, enjoyment and suffering, are all really only different aspects, different poles, negative pole, positive pole of the same truth. So this is what he is saying, and that you can enjoy when you become master of yourself. Master of yourself, master of the world, and master of Prakriti. Okay. That brings us to the end of the chapter, and we have to go to the next chapter, which is the liberation, the soul and its liberation. How does the soul, which is imprisoned in the body, mind, life, become free? Okay? And when you become free, one realizes, the individual consciousness realizes that it is not subject to body, mind, life. It is free. The body, mind, life was a house in which you were living. That's what Swami is saying. We have got time. So shall we start reading? We have got about nearly 15 minutes. So shall we read the next one? The soul and its liberation. Jasmine has read and Sumki has read. Gitanjali can read if she is ready. Or if she is not.
Swami.
Okay, go ahead. Read the first part.
The soul and its liberation.
Yeah.
We have now to pause and consider to what this acceptance of the relations of Purusha and Prakriti commits us. For it means that the yoga which we are pursuing has for end none of the ordinary aims of humanity. It neither accepts our earthly existence as it is, nor can be satisfied with some kind of moral perfection or religious ecstasy, with a heaven beyond, or with some dissolution of our being by which we get satisfactorily done with the trouble of existence. Our aim becomes quite other. It is to live in the divine, the infinite, in God, and not in any mere egoism and temporality, but at the same time, not apart from nature, from our fellow beings, from earth and the mundane existence, any more than the divine lives aloof from us and the world. He exists also in relation to the world and nature and all these beings, but with an absolute and inalienable power, freedom, and self knowledge. Our liberation and perfection is to transcend ignorance, bondage, and weakness, and live in Him in relation to the world and nature with the divine power, freedom, and self knowledge. For the highest relation of the soul to existence is the Purusha's possession of Prakriti when he is no longer ignorant and subject to his nature, but knows, transcends, enjoys, and controls his manifested being and determines largely and freely what shall be his self expression.
Okay. So this is the first paragraph. He is summarizing basically what he has said earlier. Now he is saying we have now to pause and to consider to what this acceptance of the relations of Purusha and Prakriti commits us. For it means that the yoga which we are pursuing has for end none of the ordinary aims of humanity. He is making a distinction between what the other yogas are doing and what the integral yoga wants to do. Because the relation of Purusha and Prakriti is the unity is denied by many yogas. Okay, the ascetic particularly. Okay, in Jnana Yoga also, you get rid of your Prakriti. You are not interested in Prakriti. Prakriti is a construction of nature. Just like a house is constructed after 100 years, 150 years, it will be destroyed and replaced by another. Okay, or a tree which lasts maximum for some of the trees last even for 400, 500 years, like the redwood trees in California. They are so big and so vast, they last for 300, 400 years. Maybe some other mango trees and other things don't last that long, but they are born and they die. So the ascetic and the Jnana Yoga path usually, you reject that which is born and dies. You don't want it. And that's a Prakriti. Everything in nature, everything in the world is born and it dies. Even the Himalayas will die one day. In fact, the scientists are warning us that even our sun will one day burn itself out. Maybe a million years, they say it may take a million years, but nothing in the physical world is permanent. Its nature is transience. Okay? So, when what something is transient, why the hell should that which is permanent bother itself about the transient? That is the argument of the Jnana Yoga and the others. Okay? But Srindu says, wait. Permanence and impermanence are different states. Why should you reject the impermanence? The impermanence, in the impermanence, there is hiding behind the impermanence a permanent. A mango tree may die, the Himalayas may die, okay, but the divine presence there in the physical world never dies. It is there. So why don't you take to that? Don't reject the forms, but don't reject the essential word. That's what he's saying. Okay? Very interesting distinction. That's why he's saying we should now pause and see what others are saying and what we are saying. For it means, okay, that the yoga which we are pursuing has for end none of the ordinary aims of humanity. Then he is listing you what the aims of humanity are. We'll look at that. It neither accepts our earthly existence as it is. Now, who is the one who does that? It accepts the earthly existence as it is. It is the materialist, or even those who see the imperfections, they accept it. This is the philosophy of existentialism. Yes, I see that there is imperfection in the physical world, but you can do nothing about it. You accept it. So this sentence, what he's saying, it neither accepts our earthly existence as it is. Two, one can be the materialist and also the existentialist. Yes, I see the imperfection, but I can do nothing about it. Nor can, is the second now, or rather third if you want, nor can be satisfied with some kind of moral perfection or religious ecstasy. This is usually what the Christians want, okay? Moral perfection. Make yourself perfect. Morality, okay? Or religious ecstasy, the bhakta, okay? If you get ecstasy in the world, that's enough. What else you want? Okay? With a heaven beyond or with some dissolution of our being. Dissolution of our being, the body-mind life dissolves itself, okay, and becomes. So that's the ascetic tendency, by which we get satisfactorily done with the trouble of existence. This is also the Buddhistic philosophy. Okay, we are satisfied by getting rid of body-mind life. Now there is no more suffering for me. And after that, no more suffering. Also, there are two choices. Either you can disappear into the nothingness, which is, what is it called? Nirvana. Or you can remain in the subtle worlds, okay, without any, you can maintain your individuality in the spiritual worlds without any ignorance. That also is possible. So Srimla has listed all the possibilities. But he says our aim is different. We don't reject the physical world. We reject the forms. We don't even reject them. We see the divine reality behind the forms. Even in a stone, we can see the divine presence. So we don't reject neither the form nor the essence of the form. Okay? It neither accepts our, or the with the trouble of existence. The next sentence we have to read is our aim. Our aim, when it says our aim, it is the integral yoga. Our aim becomes quite other. It is to live in the divine, the infinite, in God, and not in any mere egoism or temporality. You live in the divine, in the infinite, in God. Okay? He's saying three things: the divine, the infinite, and God. So, why is he saying these three things? In the divine, the transcendent. The infinite, the cosmic. In God, the personal aspect. Okay? In God, the personal aspect. So he's saying that that's what we have to live. We don't reject any of these. Okay? And not in any mere egoism or temporality. Temporality, our body-mind life is a temporality. So we don't live in the body-mind life. We live outside the body-mind life but control it. And not any mere egoism. We are not bound by our body-mind life. But at the same time, not apart from nature, not apart from our fellow beings, not apart from earth and the mundane existence. We don't reject the physical world any more than the divine lives aloof from us and the world. If the divine is there in the world, why should we reject? We should do what God is doing. He exists also in relation to the world and power and wait. No, where is it gone? He exists also in relation to the world and nature and all these beings. There is a relation with the divine, with the individual forms, but with an absolute, inalienable power, freedom, and self-knowledge. We are also connected with everything. We are also connected with others. We are also connected with the universe, but without power and freedom and self-knowledge. We are attached, we have attachment. But the divine, when you are in the consciousness of the divine, you have a relation with all these things, but without attachment. And therefore you have power also over them, freedom and self-knowledge. Our liberation and perfection, where is it gone? Our liberation and perfection is, our means, again the integral yoga. Remember, huh? Okay. Whenever he says ours, he means my philosophy. Our liberation and perfection is to transcend ignorance, not the physical world. You transcend ignorance, bondage, and weakness, and live in Him, H cap, God, in relation to the world and nature with the divine power, freedom, and self-knowledge. We don't want to be powerless and we don't want to be slave to body-mind life, nor should we have ignorance of ourselves. So, divine power, you have power. Freedom, you are not bound, you are not a slave to your body mind life, nor you are ignorant of yourself, self-knowledge. For the highest relation of the soul to existence is the Purusha's possession of Prakriti. Again a key word. When Purusha possesses Prakriti, it has got power over it. Okay? When I possess something, it's under my control. I can do whatever I want. Okay? So it's a very favorite word of Sri Aurobindo, possession. The implications are you are master. Okay? Purusha's possession of Prakriti, when he is no longer ignorant and subject to his nature. We are subject to our nature. We are subject to our body mind life without knowing it. We don't even think. Okay? When you are hungry, it's the body that is telling you, I want food, give me food. And you go very happily and do it. You are subject to your body. Okay? When the desire is there and your vital tells you, I want this thing. Okay? You go and do it very happily, thinking that you are doing. Actually, it's the vital controlling you. But knows, transcends, enjoys, and controls his manifested being and determines largely and freely what shall be his self-expression. So you determine largely. Largely means you have power over the whole universe. Okay. Again, I remind you of what Sri Aurobindo was doing in the physical world. It is very interesting what he is doing in the physical world. I keep repeating that we have two proofs of that. Okay, one is that the book The Lost Footsteps, which there is a prisoner in Romania, in communist Romania, and he is suffering, but he has an experience for 3 days with Sri Aurobindo. Okay, and Sri Aurobindo is telling him that suicide is not the way. You have to learn, and when you bear all the suffering, you will benefit. Okay, so he is guiding him. Then the other case was the John Kelly. I told you. Okay, so interestingly, you he has used this experience of his even in Savitri. He speaks of the prisoner in the dungeon cell. He is referring to Silvio Crasionas, okay, very clearly because he had that experience. We don't know about it, but when Silvio Crasionas himself is writing in the book that Aurobindo goes, who was advising me, then we know that Silvio is doing all this. Okay, 8:40. So we stop here today, first para, and we'll take up the next one, a oneness finding itself. Okay, so. Okay. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup.
Have a happy 1st April